I always thought of myself as a devout wife and mother. My marriage wasn't perfect, but it was stable and predictable over the years my husband and I had settled into a routine of letting difference. We lived together, raised our kids together, yet somewhere along the way, the spark that once connected us faded into an unspoken distance. I told myself I didn't mind, it was normal, just part of growing older together. My son Ethan had recently turned 21, and his group of friends practically lived at our house. The loud laughter and clinking off beer bottles echoed through our living room most weekends, but I didn't mind. It was comforting to see. Ethan happy and surrounded by people who cared about him. Among them was a young man named Ryan who stood out for reasons I couldn't quite pinpoint. Ryan was tall with sandy blonde hair and an easygoing charm that seemed to light up the room. Was always polite and respectful, but there was a quiet confidence about him that made me notice him in a way I probably shouldn't have at 24. He was barely older than Ethan, yet there was something magnetic about him. It all started one lazy Saturday afternoon. Ethan and his friends were outside by the pool, laughing and tossing a football around while I prepared snacks. In the kitchen, that's when Ryan walked in, dripping wet and shirtless. Mrs. Durhesed flashing me that disarming smile. Did you need any help? I waved him off, trying to focus on the platter of sandwiches I was arranging. No, thank you, Ryan, you shall go back and enjoy yourself, but hadn't leave. Instead, he leaned against the counter, watching me with an intensity that made my pulse quicken. You'll always take such good care of everyone. I said softly. You deserve to relax. To his words caught me off guard. For a moment, I forgot how to breathe. It wasn't just what he said, it was the way he said it, his voice low and sincere, as if he saw something in me that I hadn't recognized in years. I brushed it off with a nervous laugh. That's what moms do, I replied, attempting to keep the conversation light. But the way he looked at me made it impossible to ignore the unspoken tension hanging in the air. In the weeks that followed, I found myself noticing Ryan more and more, the way his laughter filled the room and how hallways found an excuse to linger in the kitchen. When I was there, I told myself it was harmless, a silly crush that will never go anywhere. But deep down, I knew there was more to it than that. Then in the evening, everything changed. Ethan had gone out with his friends, but Ryan stayed behind, claiming he wasn't feeling well. I offered to make him some tea and sat with him in the living room. The house felt unusually quiet, without the usual chaos of young voices. As we talked, I realized how easy it was to open up to him. He listened in a way my husband hadn't in years. His eyes never left Mania's. I shared my frustrations and fierce loneliness I hadn't even admitted to myself. When I finished speaking, he reached out and took my hand. You're incredible, Mrs. Carter, he said softly, his voice barely above a whisper. You deserve to feel alive. Before I could respond, Helen in and kissed me softly at first, then, with a hunger that left me breathless, every rational thought screamed at me to stop, to pull away, but he couldn't. For the first time in years, I felt wanted, desired, alive. We pulled apart just as the front door opened and Ethan's voice called out. Panic surged through me as Ryan quickly stepped back, his expression unreadable. I spent the rest of the evening in a haze, barely able to meet my son's eyes, while guilt and exhilaration waged war within me in days that followed. Ryan and I never SP spoke of what had happened, but the memory of that kiss lingered, a dangerous secret we both carried. I knew it was wrong. I knew I was risking everything, but part of me couldn't help wondering what if that night after Ryan kissed me, sleep eluded me entirely. I lay in bed beside my husband Steve, his rhythmic snoring oblivious to the storm raging inside me. My mind replayed the kiss over and over, the heat of Ryan's lips, the way his hand lingered on me, the intensity of his gaze. It had been years since I'd felt that kind of passion. Now I wasn't sure if I was more terrified by what had happened or how much I craved it again the next day. I tried to avoid Ryan entirely. Ethan had a group project, so I assumed Ryan wouldn't Coming over, but as if the universe were testing my resolve, the doorbell rang in the late afternoon. My stomach dropped when I opened the door to find him standing there with a small box of tools. Even told me you needed help fixing the cabinet in the laundry room, Ryan said casually, though his eyes betrayed a flicker of something deeper nervousness. Perhaps I hesitated for a moment, but eventually stepped aside to let him in. It's in the back, I said stiffly as I led the way. The air between us was thick with unspoken tension. Ryan worked quietly, his usual charm replaced be an unusual seriousness. I hovered near the doorway, unsure whether to leave or stay. My heart pounded so loudly that I was sure he could hear it. When half finished, he turned to me, his face irritable. Mrs. Carter, about the other night. Ryan, we can't. I interrupted, my voice trembling. It was a mistake, a moment of weakness. He stepped closer and he instinctively backed up until my back hit the wall. He was inches away, now hissing clean and masculine, overwhelming me senses. Was it really a mistake? He softly, his voice barely above a whisper, because I can't stop thinking about you, about how it felt to kiss you. I wanted to deny it, to push him away, but truth was I couldn't stop thinking about him either. My resolve crumbled. Ash reached out his hand and brushed my cheek. You deserve more than this life, Hammer mirrored. You deserve to feel alive, to feel wanted, just like that. The walls I built around myself came crashing down. I closed the distance between us, my lips finding his in a desperate, hungry kiss this time. There was no hesitation, no guilt, just pure, unrestrained passion. Passions roamed my body, igniting a fire I hadn't felt in years. In that moment, I felt like a woman again, not just a wife or a mother, but a woman desirable and needed. We ended up in the laundry room. The mundane surroundings of my domestic life stood in stark contrast to the reckless abandon of what we were doing. His touch and kisses consumed me, making me forget everything else. My marriage, my family, the consequences. When it was over, we sat in silence, the weight of what we had done settling over us like a heavy blanket. I avoided his gaze as shame crept in to replace the euphoria I'd felt moments ago. This can't happen again, I whispered, more to myself than to him, but even as I said it, I knew it was Allie. Want to dive deeper into stories that evoke passion and conflict, like and subscribe for more explorations of love, longing, and the choices we make. I hope to see you again in the next video.